Hey guys, so I love growing peppers in my raised vegetable garden. I've actually dedicated 3 full-size beds just to peppers, and then I have numerous planters around the garden. But I'm going to show you a pepper growing system that doesn't require watering. It requires minimal effort and very, very little upkeep. So this is some way you can grow peppers super easy. So not everybody has a large garden or raised beds, or they don't want to dedicate that much time to working with them. But what I'm going to show you, you could do on an apartment balcony, you could do it on a small patio, a back porch, anywhere like that. So some neighborhoods have HOAs that don't even allow gardens. So this way I'm going to show you how you can grow something that looks like a potted plant from a distance, but it's actually a very productive pepper growing system. So let's go into the potting shed. The greenhouse is about 100 degrees today. We'll head over to the potting shed and I'll show you how to put this together. And I'll also give you the chance to download a PDF that goes into great detail about growing peppers. 18 pages you can do that with from my Patreon. You can either, if you're a member, you can get it for free, or you can just buy it outright if you're not a member. So let's head over there and I'll show you exactly how to put this system together. So guys, as I mentioned a minute ago, there is an 18-page PDF that goes along with this. This goes into extreme detail. I don't want to make a 2-hour video because I would lose most of my viewers by doing that. So if you're into research and you want to go deep into the subject, take a look at the PDF. Otherwise, I'm just going to give the kind of the overall general idea here and show you how to assemble this system. But if you want to have an expert level of knowledge, take a look at the PDF, download it, save it to your device, or print out a copy. So guys, I want to go over the basic things you're going to need to put all this together. You're going to need any type of large bottle, and the larger the plastic bottle, the better. If you can get a hold of some of those extra large water containers that they deliver to businesses and homes, that would be ideal. But this is what I just happen to have around the greenhouse, and I've already grew peppers in this. It worked perfectly. You're going to need some really sharp scissors or a utility knife. You're going to need a drill. I'm going to recommend that you have 2 different sizes, maybe a 1/4 inch and maybe something quite a bit smaller, and I'll explain that in just a second. You're going to need a cotton rope or some type of wicking material. This is a very special type of wicking material here. I'll talk about that in just a second, where you can order it and everything else. You're going to need your potting mix. There's going to be several additives you're going to need to add to your potting mix because we're growing in such a small container. You'll understand that as well. You're going to need your pepper seedlings or pepper seeds. You can do it either way. It's kind of late in the year now, so you may want to go pick up some seedlings or small plants to start with. You're going to need very, very pure water. I'll explain that as well. You also want to mark this. Every time I start a lot of different things in pots, I'll forget what's what. The marker that I use paint sticks that are free from my local big box store or the paint store I go to, and I just write on the side of them with permanent magic marker and stick it down there so I know exactly the variety of pepper I'm growing. And then finally, this is going to have a little bit of a sharp edge around the plastic, so you can take some tape and fold it over the top if you are easily cut. It's just an optional idea, but you can do that with just ordinary painter's tape or some of the furnace type tape. All right, so let's start with our bottle. Depending on whatever size, I would recommend at least minimum of 1 gallon. Anything smaller than that is not going to probably hold enough material in our feeding sources and our water. So let's start with that. You're going to go maybe close to halfway down the bottle. So just carefully cut it. This razor blade wants to go back in there, so I need to tighten it up. So again, you're not going to the halfway mark, but close to it, and just carefully go all the way around the perimeter of the bottle and cut the top off. Now next, before I move on to our next thing we need to do to our bottle, I want to talk about the wicking material. This particular type of wick is a fiberglass wick, and I'm experimenting with these by using 2 of them on a very, very large plastic heavy-duty cat litter container. It's huge and it really works well, and I can grow a variety of other things other than peppers in it. But for these small bottles, just a small piece of cotton rope like this, and I'll put on the screen right here a lot of different things you can use, but you just want something that's not colored, it's not been stained in any way, it doesn't have any chemicals on it, so you want it to be absolutely pure because we're using this as our water transfer system from our reservoir to our plant. So again, this is just an optional item. I'll put a link in the description if you want to try a really large container size, because as you can see, this is probably a little bit over 1 foot in length, so it can go deep into the reservoir, and these are specifically made for candles, so it can pull up water very easily through these wicking system. This, you need to be a little bit closer to the water system, and this is better for smaller containers. Now, out of the two drill bits, there's a specific reason we have a larger drill bit. I'll talk about that in just a second. And then the smaller drill bit needs to be just slightly larger than our wicking material. This little cotton rope, as you can see, is almost exactly the same as our drill bit. We're going to take our drill and drill into the top of the cap with that particular drill bit. I'm going to just put it back in my drill here, and we'll just carefully drill. Now, you don't want to ream it out. You don't want to lean your drill back and forth. You just want it to be exactly as close to the same size as the drill bit as possible. So remember, just do this nice and slow. Okay, so we have our hole drilled in the top half of our bottle. Now we're going to take some of our wicking material. It's going to take me a second to find the end of it here. It's all tangled up. This has been in the potting shed for a long time, and I haven't used it in a while. Now, you're not going to need a super long piece. I would say the length of your top of your bottle, do that, and then also calculate how far to the very bottom of our base bottle. And you might want it just to wrap just a little bit around the bottle at the base of that particular bottle. So just estimate the best you can. In this case, it's going to be about a foot, and this all depends on the size bottle you're using. We're going to cut this in half, and then another little trick to keep it falling back into the water reservoir. We want the top half to stay up there. We're going to tie a very small knot in the very end of it, and that way it won't come through our opening. I'm going to flip this over, and then I'm going to feed it through this. This is not too easy to do because it's hard to watch the camera and make sure I'm on film there. Okay, so now we have a very tight system there, so it won't fall through. But when we get our soil in there, we want this to be slightly above it there. So I probably should have left more than just an inch there. So I might retie it and have the knot going about 2 or 3 inches down, because we want the top portion of our fiber wick, or not fiber wick, but this is our cotton wick, to be a little bit higher in the jar. So just remember that as the soil dries out, it's going to start wicking it up. Now these, as I said, these fiberglass wicks, you need to make sure that you drill the hole where they're really tight, because you don't want it falling down into your reservoir, especially if you're using something like 5-gallon buckets or anything that's really large size, like the cat litter thing I told you about. So just remember, you don't want it to fall back down in there. So I'm going to retie this and have it sticking up just a little bit higher so it can draw the water to the root system of our pepper plant. Now, after retying, you can see that our knot is about 2 or 3 inches down the string. So I just want to make sure I corrected my mistake there, to make sure that as the water wicks up, it works its way past the knot, so there's no concern there. But inside the soil, we want the water coming at least close to the root zone when we first plant it. So I'm hoping you can see that it is securely not going to come out. It's not going to fall into our water reservoir one day when we're at work, and we have the water going directly to our root zone. Now next, we're going to take just a common stapler, just a desk stapler, and we're going to staple all 4 sides of this to help stabilize this. And you're probably thinking, well, how can I add more water to the reservoir? We'll get to that in just 1 second. It's a little bit hard to see, but if you feel around, you can see that your staple needs to be close to the top of the other bottle. A little bit hard to do. Okay, make sure it went in there. As you can see, that did not go in there, so I'm going to have to go down just a little bit further and staple that again. Okay, so we've stapled the 2 bottles together to make sure they won't come out. If it's blowing wind or a pet gets too close, it doesn't knock it over and the whole system comes apart. So staple all 4 sides to make sure, and having one of these desk staplers is certainly handy. Now I'm going to change up my drill bits, and I'm going to carefully try to drill through the side of our bucket here, and I'll show you why we're doing that, into the reservoir, not into the potting mix. So very close to the top of our reservoir, we're just going to carefully, and this is going to take a little bit longer because I need to not put as much pressure on it, so I'm just going to carefully drill into the side. I'm hoping you can see that there. Drill into the side of our water reservoir. Okay, so I've drilled into the side of our water reservoir here, and the reason we're doing that is in this small container, water does need to be replenished from time to time. It's not going to take it up all in one day or maybe even 1 week, but what we want to do is we want a small watering can like this that has a very small ending, so you can bring it up to it and refill it. We could add more nutrients if we wanted to, but I'm going to talk about, just for a sec, about a system that you will never have to water. Once you filled it up, the reservoir up with water, it will last for the entire summer. Now, as I said, this is going to have a very limited amount of water in it, but if you want to build one that's going to last for the entire summer, you're going to fill it up with water and nutrients and not have to worry about it for the rest of the summer. You're going to need to upsize to a much larger size can. A 5-gallon bucket might take you a month, but using one of the trash cans, and I'll put a link right here to a video that I made, a composter out of one of those big black trash cans. You can use one of those to have multiple plants in the top, on a top piece, and then in your bottom piece you could have maybe 20 gallons of water and multiple wicks going down into it, so it could literally last for the entire summer. So that requires a little bit more effort, a little bit more money to put together. But if you truly want a system of not having to worry about watering for the entire summer on your peppers or whatever you're growing in these type of containers, and there's a lot of things that will grow, then go upsize to something that size. But as far as these, I can just monitor these once a week, see the water level dropped a little bit, and once it's almost completely empty, then I can use my little watering can to add a little bit more nutrients and water. So remember, the system will work. You'll just need to upsize it to something much larger where you don't have to worry about maintenance every day or watering. Now I stepped back out to the garden to get one to show you that it's been growing great, and there's two pretty good sized peppers on here. I'll bring you in a little bit closer to look at that, but I wanted to show you how I've stabilized it in our very small container. I've taken one of these free paint sticks. I've labeled the exact pepper type here with one paint stick and then stabilized it. And then I use one of these plastic tomato clips to make sure it doesn't fall off. You could use a bread tie, piece of twine, whatever, but I love these little ties because you can use them year after year, and they'll last for anywhere from 4 to 6 years depending on how intense your summer heat is. Eventually they break down over time because of that. But I'm going to bring you in closer, let you take a look at that and see how well this is growing in such a small container, as long as it has the right nutritional system in place, the right amount of watering, and especially sunlight. Peppers like a lot of sunlight. So as you can see, there's actually a pepper on the back side here. It's a little bit smaller than the one on the front, but for such a small container, it's produced 2 really nice sized peppers. And the key is what we're putting into the soil. I'll talk about that in just a sec. But as you can see, this little small system, you could use this on an apartment balcony, a small deck in your backyard somewhere. If you have an HOA that doesn't allow gardens, this looks just like some small potted plant, and you don't have to worry about your AOA saying it's a no-no and they fine you for it. So anyways, this is the setup right here. Let's talk a little bit about the soil in here as well. Now, as far as our potting soil here, I want to say that peppers do not like to stand in soggy soil, and you'll have all sorts of disease issues. The plant may wilt and show lots of signs of stress. So peppers like the soil to be a little bit more on the dry side. So just remember, you want to make sure that you add things like perlite. You make sure a very light potting mix. Don't use soil from the ground. Of course, a lot of people know this, but I'm just saying you want to be your soil as well draining as possible and as light as possible, and that's also going to help with our wicking action coming from our reservoir. So you can see this small tiny plant has already produced 2 peppers, and by the end of summer I think I'll have maybe a dozen peppers from this one small plant. Another thing to remember is to try to keep your leaves off the soil. That can cause diseases as well. And if you want to, put the pepper plants next to each other. You can take a small electric toothbrush and go from flower to flower spreading the pollen, and you'll get a much higher rate of pepper growth. Someone had said they went from a 10% pollination rate on their flowers to a 90% just by using that method. You could use a small feather, as I said, a toothbrush, or anything, just a leaf, and just go from flower to flower and mixing the pollen between the plants to make sure you get the biggest harvest possible. I do that at least once or twice in the spring and maybe once throughout the summer. Now, another thing that's really important is you don't want this pot to become overheated. So I'm going to recommend that you use just regular aluminum foil, wrap it not once, but actually twice, and then push it over the lip to make sure it doesn't come off there, because we want the water. We don't want a lot of algae growing in water, and the more sunlight that actually hits the water, you're going to see more algae growing down there, which I don't think it would hurt it, but you don't want it to become a green gloppy mess inside of your water reservoir. Also, you don't want the soil to become super heated or dry, so I'd recommend putting, I would say, the very finely shredded pine bark. You can get it at Lowe's Warehouse, I believe. I can't remember the name. I think it's Greenwise or something like that, but it's a very finely shredded pine bark. So you can fill that all the way up to the edge, and that can help stabilize the soil moisture as well. So not only does it help keep the soil from drying out, but it helps the wicking action from below because it's not drying so quickly. So you just have a nice steady flow of water from the bottom of our planting thing. So remember, aluminum foil is going to save you a lot of headaches on those hot summer days when you come out and you see your pepper plant has just wilted from a 1 hour drying period. There's a lot of things you need to do to the soil, and getting back to my 18-page PDF, it's going to give you instructions on what to add to the soil, such as eggshell powder. That's really important because that can prevent blossom end rot and it can help the plant overall. So not just eggshells, you want to grind them into a fine powder. Use a blender. If you have a blender that has a plastic container, that eggshells can damage it. So make sure it's a glass container so you can wipe that off there. But the PDF will tell you everything you need to do to the soil, how to monitor the system, everything. So it's 18 pages. This would turn into a 2 to 3 hour video if I included everything. So the system is working great for me. You can upsize it to the size of a trash can, or if you ideally have one of those water delivery service and have those extra large plastic water bottles, that could last for years because the plastic on those are so much thicker than these disposable bottles you find at the grocery store filled with whatever you're buying. So just remember, you want to follow everything in the PDF, just read it carefully, and it will help you immensely with growing peppers, and lots of rules to follow along the way. So guys, I really appreciate you watching. If you love growing peppers, this will be the ideal way to do it. Even if you have a large piece of property, you can grow these right outside your back door. Go out and grab one and put it into a salad. If you live in an apartment, it's perfect on a balcony, anything like that where you have limited space. Or if you have one of those terrible, I think I said AOHs before, but it's HOA or association or whatever they are. But I'm lucky not to live in a neighborhood that has one of those, so I have minimal restrictions, only maybe from the city, but I can grow all the things I want to in my garden. So guys, if you're interested in the PDF, take a look in the description down below. I've got a link to it. You can buy the PDF outright. You don't have to become a member, but if you are already a paid member, you can get it totally free. And also, if you'll leave me a thumbs up or a comment, that would be greatly appreciated as well. I always put the comments to the front of the line that I need to answer a question on, because I get anywhere from 100 to 200 questions a week, and it's almost impossible to answer all of them. So guys, I really appreciate you watching. Have a great day.